Everyone, I just did this for OM Systems. Check that out if you'd like. There's some rumor juices brewing over at the old Panty Farm. There's two new registered cameras, and I'm pretty sure everyone's talking about these two registered cameras. I know, um, especially Panasonic fan. They're really stoked about this camera coming out. These two cameras coming out, and um, most of the news I pretty much get from the rumor sites, all of them, four thirds, Nikon, Canon. The main rumor uh, news person that I watch is Andrea Pizzini. So everything I'm getting, I'm kind of just rehashing from him. And I sprinkle in my opinions about it and what I think they're going to do. And that's really all I do for these kind of videos. Obviously, everyone's hoping that these are going to be the new S1 or S1H and S1R Mark IIs. I know that's what they're going to be. Obviously, they're not going to be released at the same time. I think Andrea has already spoken about the S1R Mark II or S2R. That one's going to be released first. So it's safe to say that it's going to be that. Like on Panasonic, kind of have they share they share cameras as of late. Both the SL2 and the S1R have the same camera internals. I do hope that they do decide to use the S1H body or something similar for the new camera. Um, Nothing wrong with the S5, the S5 II, and the S5. I just don't think that feels like a a flagship camera. Um, I just personally think the S1H body is still the best body that Panasonic's ever made, next to the JH6. Not to mention the A7R5, the one of the cameras that it's going to go against it has that great screen that they basically copied off the S1H. They just kind of did it better. Panasonic um, should want to utilize that that vent, because I'm going to assume that their video specs are going to be way better than all the cameras in that tier, because that's just kind of what they do. Now, the other camera that's coming out right now that's an L mount is the Leica SL3S. That's rumored to be announced on January 16th. I think that's going to give us a better clue as to what the S1 and S1 or the S1H Mark II is going to be. Reason being is because the SL2S shares all the internals of the S1, which also shares the internals of the S1H. The S1H just has the more cinema related body, has vents and all that, and that screen. Now, most Panasonic fans are primarily video shooters and are wanting the S1H more than the S1 or whatever they call this body, whatever this body is going to be. Whatever it is, it's going to have to be magical. It's going to have pretty much everything that's in the GH7, but it's going to have to be full frame. I'm assuming, I already know, and I think everyone already knows that the S1 and S1H is probably going to be merged into one series, since the S5 and the S5 II series is pretty much their budget camera now. So I think that's just kind of a fair assumption. There is a rumor for a couple of the specs that I wanted to go over. It's supposed to have triple native ISO and dynamic range boost. I doubt that it's going to have that. And I don't think that's how it works. I do find that rumor to be a little silly just because you can't have dedicated circuitry that's for base ISOs and then also have dynamic range boost. But I don't know, maybe I could be wrong. Maybe they figured something out. I do coding and engineering for work, but I don't build cameras and sensors, so that's beyond my expertise. You think it's more likely that it is going to have dynamic range boost, not triple native ISO. I also think they'll introduce a new log profile. Currently, something tells me that the current vlog profile, since it was created so long ago at this point, that it just makes sense for an updated version to match dynamic range boost. And perhaps that's a case for introducing Arilog C3 in that camera. The GH7 having log C3, Arilog C3 doesn't mean as much just because you can't fully utilize the log curve. Sure, you really can match the colors, and that's the biggest selling point for me to get that that update. But it just doesn't match the dynamic range. Now, a larger sensor with dynamic range boost, I think Vlog, I think Vlog is great, but it was developed 10 years ago when it was released with the original VariCam, which at the time was claiming 14 stops of dynamic range. It's safe to say that's not what the actual stops are going to be. That's not what the stops were. So to me, it's funny to think that the GH6 currently probably has something close to what the VariCam had. Now regarding the megapixel count, this is where I'm lost as to what'll be better. They could totally just go with another more updated 24 megapixel sensor, but the S5 II already kind of covers that range in terms of megapixel and lower price. The S1R Mark II will cover that high megapixel things, since that's most likely going to be in the 60s. What I likely think it's going to be is something around the area of 30 to 45 megapixels. But again, the Leica SL3S is going to give us a really big clue as to what that next Panasonic model is going to have. I think it'd be smarter, business-wise, to have something close to that range, because this way it can compete against the cameras like the R5 Mark II, the Z8, and the Sony A1 Mark II. Now, what I want, but I know it's not going to happen, and what I feel is really missing throughout that no other manufacturer except for Sony is doing, is a low megapixel full frame cinema hybrid. Actually, Sony kind of abandoned that series. It feels like they sort of left the A7S III and replaced it with the FX3 instead for video. In terms of photography, the A7S III is still the way better hybrid between the two. They also have that in the ZVE1, which is primarily for vloggers, but it has that that AI chip that makes it better, that makes the autofocus better. So, you kind of aim for whatever. But all I'm trying to say is Sony's the only one that has a 12 megapixel full frame sensor. That's kind of what I wish Panasonic would do instead. I wish they would put an FX3 sensor in it. And I know you're probably thinking, oh, that's blasphemy. I'm probably going to get so much hate in the comment section for this, for even saying something like this. But I don't know, a lower megapixel sensor hasn't really been put into anything else but Sony bodies and really high-end cinema cameras. I mean, the RE35 is really only a 4.5 K sensor. I mean, I don't, that's 10, 12 megapixels. It's not very much. So I don't know. I think there's some value in that. And that sensor is still pretty incredible. I think if the S1H Mark II had that sensor and used dynamic range boost instead of dual ISO, it could outperform the FX3 in terms of dynamic range and low light performance throughout the wider ISO range. The A7S III and FX3 really only performs well at 800 and 12,800. That's in an S-Log 3. Anything in between that range, pretty much, looks like every other camera at that range, in between that range. It's really noisy, which again, I really don't mind a little bit of noise. That doesn't bother me very much. But it's just kind of wishful thinking. That's really probably not going to happen. I don't know. I really think Panasonic needs a win this year. Last year was kind of a weird year for them. The GH7 was a fair hit for as far as Micro Four Thirds cameras go. I mean, shoots ProRes RAW internally, has 32-bit float, which is insane. Obviously, you have to use the adapter, but it's still pretty cool. And again, it introduced RElog C3 in it. That was completely out of left field. I did not expect that to happen at all. They also introduced the S9, which a lot of people were hating at first and eventually started to kind of come around to it. Honestly, I even from the beginning, I thought it was a pretty dang cool camera. It's small, looks really cool, and has a great sensor in it. What I'd like to see is a G9 II version of that camera. Just literally take that body, make it micro four thirds, do the same exact thing that they did with the S5 II and the G9 II. Same body, put an MFT sensor in that. The body's already small enough. Tiny lenses from the MFT line would make that a pretty peak travel camera, in my opinion. It'll have better IBIS. One thing to note that I wish really happens, wish happens for L mount and micro four thirds mount, is more third-party support. Third-party, there's a lens out there that I kind of have like that I'm kind of gushing over. It's it's from Rokinon. It's called the Remaster Slim Wide. That one lens is really cool just because it's a single body lens. It's a pancake lens, and you can switch out the elements in it and change it to a 21 millimeter 3.5, 28 millimeter 3.5, or a 32 millimeter 2.8, I think. It's an interesting concept to me. There used to be really cool lenses that were made like that for micro four thirds. The MFT mount used to allow for more experimental things. Now it sells so little, and there's no real backing from both the parent companies and third parties. It's just not really that cool anymore. I actually still have my lomography experimental lens. I should actually probably try those lenses out. I haven't used those in years. See how they look on newer cameras. Last time I actually used that, it was probably during the EP1, EP3 era. So I'll try to dig those out and I don't know, maybe do something with those things. Oh, you know what else would be kind of cool is if the S9, if they don't make a micro four thirds version of the S9, what they could do is make an MFT adapter, yeah, L mount to MFT adapter. I know you're probably thinking, because we've all been taught to think that you can't do that. Well, Neewer actually makes a slim adapter that allows E-mount lenses to work on Z-mount cameras, and it retains autofocus and EXIF data. The size diameter between the L mount and micro four thirds is large enough that the adapter could be made and the electronics could just surround it. One random thing that I do is I don't really shoot with autofocus unless I do something like this. And even then, sometimes I kind of just manually do it and try to find my way just out of an old habit, and depends on what lens I use. But I do have a MFT mount to E mount because there's a lot of cinema lenses that are actually made for larger sensors, and they still work, you know, interchangeably. So I mean, we all live in the future. As long as there's support for it and it makes enough money, we can make it happen. Speaking of adapters, randomly, I was contemplating on whether or not I should keep my EM1 Mark II and GH6 and trade those in for a GH7, because the GH7 does have pretty much everything that's in the G9 II. So I feel like that's kind of the best hybrid. It has a lot of the features that I like, that I even use on Olympus. There's nothing special about the Olympus anymore. The main thing that I used to use was live composite, but that's in a lot of Panasonics now. And it'd be nice to not have multiple camera bodies for no reason. I'm pretty simplistic. I'm minimalistic, simplistic. I'm pretty minimalistic as far as things like that go, and it'd be nice to just kind of trim down my camera shelf a little bit. And I don't know, the GH7 kind of hits all the things that I need. It does photography really well, and it has all the features in the GH6 that I use. And I don't have to use autofocus if I don't need it. But if I decide to use or if someone out there uses autofocus and they use the Metabones adapters, they updated their Metabones adapters recently, so it works with Panasonic autofocus, their hybrid autofocus. No, they didn't bother updating it so it works with OM systems. In case you're wondering, it still works. It's just not in the same, nowhere near the same level that it works as the GH7 and the G9 II. So that's that. But just note, when I say that they updated the adapter, I don't just mean their Ultra adapter. They also updated their T adapter. The T adapter is the one that I'm more interested in. That's the one that's not speed boosted. I know you're probably thinking, why would you want a non-speed boosted adapter? Well, that defeats the purpose. Well, I guess it depends on what you're trying to shoot, but if you're trying to get the full reach benefits for Micro Four Thirds, adapting full frame and APS-C telephoto lenses, that's kind of where it's at. You can buy the Sigma 150 to 600 that's made for the E mount, for the EF mount, for the Canon mount, which you can find for less than $700. I've seen some on eBay go for as low as $550. And if you don't own a T adapter, you can get one for around $300. Sometimes I see them used for $250. So basically, you'll have the OM Systems 150 to 600 lens, which retails for $2,000 still. And that's pretty much a 50% or more discount if you're a Panasonic shooter. If you want to see how well the Metabones adapter update performs, check out Chris Flores. I'll link his video up here somewhere or down there. I'm going on a little too long, a lot longer than I anticipated, honestly, and I still have a lot to talk about when it comes to Panasonic stuff, but it's related to their cinema line stuff, so I'm gonna stop here. So thanks for listening and listening to this old guy rant about Panasonic stuff. You guys have a wonderful day.